in between, please put it in the chat box. Okay, so let me share the screen. Okay, I hope the content is visible. So let's have a quick recap of what we discussed in this module. So starting off with the introduction of what is a decision trees, what is decision tree learning, we went ahead to discuss the representation. How do we represent a decision tree? The problems which are suitable for the decision tree, which can be the problems which can make use of decision tree learning algorithms, and we also saw the basic the algorithm, the basic decision tree learning algorithm. We took an example of ID3. We are working on ID3 algorithm, uh, how to construct an ID3, what problems are suitable for ID3 algorithms, and how to construct a hypothesis space, right? Then in today's lecture, we'll be covering about hypothesis space search in decision tree learning. And in the subsequent lectures, we'll be discussing about how inductive bias can play a role in the decision tree learning and also the issues with respect to decision tree. So let me quickly go to the slide we left. So we were discussing about the ID3 learning algorithm. We saw how the algorithm looks like. So this is actually our third experiment for the machine learning lab. So you can make a note of this. You can take a screenshot or pause the video whenever it will be uploaded in the YouTube, right? Uh, Yeah, in the ID3 algorithm, as we said, the first and the foremost important thing is the creating of a root node, right, or selecting of the root node. So how do we select the root node? By selecting which can be said to be best classifier will be our root node. But how do we say that a particular attribute is a best classifier? When that attribute from the set of attributes that we have, attribute when it is able to give us maximum information, right, or the maximum information gain by using this information gain is actually a statistical property, right? So we saw how to compute this information gain. Now how can we say classifier can give us entropy, right? Then we saw how entropy is computed. What is this p plus p minus? It is actually the portion of positive examples and p negative is portion of negative examples. Then once we have the entropy, we used the value that we got from the entropy to compute the information gain, right? And we saw a few important notes that entropy will lie between 0 to 1. Like, for example, if all the examples are positive, the entropy will be 0. If all the examples are negative, then the entropy will again be 0. But when we have equal number of distribution of positive as well as negative, that is 50-50, then the entropy will be 1, right? And also typical case, we saw a typical case wherein we have, let's say, unequal number of positive as well as negative examples, which generally we have. Then in that case, our entropy will lie between 0 to 1. So that's the most of the cases that we see, right? Our entropy will be from 0 to 1. We saw the graph, how the entropy would look like. And once we get the entropy, we substitute the value of that entropy to compute the information gain, right? And the information gain, the formula for information gain is this: the entropy of that particular sample space S minus the summation of the ratio of all the values, right? Ratio of all the values and the product of that sample space. So what are these values? SV, for example, let's say we took an example of wind, right? We took an example of wind. So wind will have two values. Wind have two values here, that is weak and strong, right? So depending on weak and strong, we computed the entropy for that particular attribute. So this was the example that we saw. Example wherein we have 14 examples in the data set, training example. wherein we have 9 positive and 5 negative examples. So value for wind can be either weak or strong. So it can be only two possible values. So the entropy, when we compute the entropy that we got was something 0.940, right? Let me go back and show. Yeah. So this was the entropy that we got 0.940. And then that entropy was substituted into the gain formula. This is the gain formula. And SV can be, the SV is the value for that particular attribute, which is in our case, the attribute wind will have either weak value or strong value. So for weak, what is S weak and what is S strong, we saw, and that is substitute into the gain formula to compute the ultimate information gain. So here is the value for that information gain that we got for the attribute wind. Similarly, here I think this is the slide where we stopped in the previous lecture. So moving ahead, once we have the information gain for wind, this was just one example that was with respect to wind, but we have to compute the information gain for outlook, for temperature, for humidity as well, and then out of which we have to decide which particular attribute gives us the most information gain or highest information gain, and which is the attribute that is best, can be called as a best classifier. So you can say, so this is the point, the information gain that we got for wind attribute, 0.048. So similarly, when we compute the entropy and substitute that for the other attributes, for example, humidity, right? We already computed for wind, the entropy that we got was 0.940, which was substituted into the gain formula, and we end up having the information gain value as 0.48. Now, in similar fashion, when we compute it for other attributes, let's say for humidity. For humidity, again, our entropy remains same, that is 0.940. And your humidity can have either two values, that is high or normal. So in both the cases, the entropy that we get, so for a high value for the attribute humidity, we get entropy as 0.985. And for normal value, we get entropy as 0.592. And similarly, when we substitute into the gain formula, we get gain as 0.151. So as you can compare, as you can see here, compared to wind, the humidity is able to give us more information gain, right? So 0.151 is greater than 0.048, right? So the information gain given by humidity is higher than information gain given by wind. So we can say that humidity is a better classifier compared to wind, right? In order to select an attribute which can be our root attribute. But we haven't computed yet for the outlook and temperature, right? So when we compute for outlook as well as temperature, we get these values, right? These are the values for, so here just for your reference, I have given the information gain that we got for the wind by substituting all the values, and information gain that we got for the humidity. So as you can see, humidity, the information gain got from humidity is slightly greater than the information gain that we had got from the wind attribute. So in comparatively in these two cases, humidity is a best classifier. But when we compare the information gain for outlook and temperature, when we compute for these values, the values that we get is, for outlook we get 0.246, and for temperature we get 0.029, right? And as we have already computed for wind, that is 0.48, and humidity 0.151. So amongst all these information gain for all the four attributes, that is outlook, humidity, wind, and temperature, you can clearly make it out that the information gain provided by the outlook is comparatively higher than all the other attributes, right? All the other information gained by the other attributes. So it is quite evident that outlook is our best classifier. So that is the reason we can go ahead with selecting the attribute outlook for the main root, for our main root of our decision tree, right? So our first attribute, the first node, which is our root node, will be our outlook. So in similar fashion, if we want to construct the tree, depending on whatever the information or the whatever the calculations that we have currently at this stage, so this is the tree that we get. So this is a partial tree, you can say. This is not the complete tree. It is the under construction tree, you can say. That we have all these set of training examples right from training example D1 to D14. So please remember the table. This is the table. So I would like you to remember this table. This table is again very important. Right from training example D1 to D4, we are going to classify and form the hypothesis search for it, hypothesis space for it, right? So we have 14 training examples. So initially we have D1 to D14, out of which we have 9 positive examples and 5 negative. By positive and negative, I mean the outcome, the playing tennis. This is our target function, right? Playing tennis. So positive examples are the examples, the training examples, which allows us to play the tennis. So as you can see here, these are the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? I think I've missed out this one, 9. So we have 9 training examples which are positive. So 9 positive and the remaining are negative, right? Because under those conditions, we are not allowed to play the tennis. So you can say they are negative examples. So this is our sample space, right? So 9 positive and 5 negative examples is that we have. And then since we have computed the entropy and as well as the information gain, and we have concluded that outlook is our best classifier, so outlook will be selected as our root node, right? This is our root node, and which is the most important and first step in the ID3 algorithm. Now, subsequently, when we go at the outlook basically has 3 values. So let me show you the table once again. That outlook can have 3 values. Either it can be sunny, it can be overcast, or it can be rain. So there are 3 values for the attribute outlook. So for all these 3 values, that is sunny, overcast, and rain, what are the training examples that we have? So as you can see, they are subdivided. These total 14 training examples are divided or categorized on the basis of the values for the outlook. So these values D1, D2, D8, D9, and D11, they are the training examples with attribute value of outlook as sunny, and D3, D7, D12, and D13 are with overcast, and D4, D5, D6, D10, and D14 are remaining. That is, the attribute value for the attribute outlook is rain. Now, amongst these all training examples, out of these all training examples, 2 are positive. That means out of these training examples, 2 are conditions wherein the outlook is sunny and the play tennis, that is our outcome, is yes. Right? So 2 are positive and remaining 3 are negative. And these out of these 4, all 4 are positive. That means whenever the value for the attribute outlook is overcast, then we are going to play the tennis. So it is yes. So in all 4 cases, it is yes. That means there is 0 negative cases. There is under overcast, there is no way that we cannot play the tennis, right? So there are 0 negative example, and similarly for rain, for the attribute outlook, 3 are positive. That means under 3 conditions we can play tennis if there is rain, and under 2 conditions we cannot play tennis when there is rain. So these are depending on the other values, other attributes. So far, I hope other things is clear. Now, once we have this much tree constructed, the next step is to decide the other attribute value or subtree. What will be our subtree, right? So in order to decide our subtree, again we have to define the root or intermediate node basically. Intermediate node which can help us construct the below tree. So depending on these information that we have, this data that we have, depending on this, we are going to compute again the entropy and the information gain so that we can select again the best classifier, right? Or the best suitable attribute which can be placed here. So how do we compute that? Again, which attribute should be tested here, right? So for this particular example, let me take this example that is the first node. When the sample space for Outlook is Sunny, right? This is only with respect to Sunny. So for Sunny, we have the training examples as D1, D2, D8, D9, and D11. Right? Let me show you the table. So for Sunny, we have D1, D2, D8, D9, and D11. These are the five training examples, right? So once we have that, now we are only computing for this particular node. Please remember, we are only computing for this particular node, which will be the next best attribute. Since we have already used the outlook, here it will be either humidity or it will be temperature, right? Or it will be wind. So out of these three attributes, which will be the best suitable attribute that will fit here? That we have to compute. So for all these attributes, humidity, temperature, and wind, right? Humidity, temperature, and wind. Again, we compute the entropy, and using that entropy, we substitute into the information gain formula, and we compute the information gain in all the cases, humidity, temperature, as well as wind. So here you can clearly see that the information gain that we have got for humidity is 0.970. The information gain for temperature is 0.570 and the information gain for wind is 0.019. So out of these three, as you can clearly see, the information gain for humidity is much more higher than other. We can say that humidity attribute is the best suitable attribute for this uh, branch of our main tree, right? So this is the best classifier for at this stage. So here it will come humidity. Now, when we move ahead, when we see this branch of our tree, that is the overcast for the attribute outlook, you can clearly see that there is no negative example, right? There are zero negative examples. So, in this condition, the ultimate decision or the discrete value for this particular decision tree will be yes, right? So, we have just four training examples, and all four training examples are positive. So there is no further, you can say, uh, classification to be done, and we can simply say that under those conditions, that is when the outlook is overcast, we are ready to play the game, or we are allowed to play the game tennis. So we can simply conclude that it is yes. So we have labeled this particular branch of the tree as yes. Okay, so those who are joining late, please, I would request to be on time because once I share the screen, I will not be able to see your joining requests. Anyways, yeah. So the next part of our tree is to select the best attribute here, right? So in similar fashion, like we computed for sunny, we have to compute it for rainy, the rain condition. In rain condition, for the attribute outlook, what will be the information gain for the attribute temperature or wind? Because there are only two possible values which can go here, that is either temperature or wind, right? So we have to compute the information gain for only temperature as well as only for wind here. And the attribute which gives us most information gain or higher information gain, that will be the attribute suitable for this part of the tree, this part of the subtree, you can say. I hope you got the crux of it, how to decide a particular root node, how to descend in our decision tree, how to select a sub node, the root node for our subtree. Not actually root node, it is actually an intermediate node of our whole tree, and so on. So This is a repeated fashion. I mean, it is done in a repeated fashion. And ultimately, when we have, so when you compute the information gain and entropy for all the other attributes, so you can clearly see that this is the final tree that we will able to get for our play tennis problem, right? So attribute outlook is the most or the best classifier, then humidity, and then again the wind. So that depends on the conditions and the training examples that we have. And as I said, when we encounter that overcast for the attribute outlook, then we are simply going to play the tennis without further classification. So ultimate value or the ultimate objective is to get these the discrete values, right? These discrete values, either yes or no, whether we are going to play the tennis or we are not going to play the tennis. So these are the discrete values. Now these discrete values, as you can clearly make it out, these are our leaf nodes. So hope you can recall that this was the diagram that we saw initially at the beginning when we saw the ID3 algorithm, right? So this is how we construct the decision tree. I hope these things are clear, and you will be able to create your own decision tree given a particular problem. Now, once we have the decision tree, the set of hypotheses that we have created, now how do we go ahead with that? The hypothesis space search in the decision tree learning, right? So what is this hypothesis space search? It is basically the hypothesis space searched by this algorithm, the ID3 algorithm, is the set of all the possible decision trees. Right? You can clearly see, let me go to the diagram again. So what is this hypothesis space search? When we construct this hypothesis, so these hypotheses are basically the set of all possible decision tree, right? Now this itself, this is a one decision tree. This is again another decision tree. This is again another decision tree, and this whole tree itself is another decision tree, and so on. So when we construct this hypothesis, right? I hope you are clear with the term hypothesis now. When we create this hypothesis and the space, hypothesis space, these are nothing but the possible decision trees itself. It is the set of all possible decision trees. Now, what does it performs? It performs simple to complex, right? We have already seen this in our previous lectures. How the ID3 algorithm creates the decision tree. It constructs the tree from simple to complex, right? Top to down approach we have seen. Simple to complex hill search climbing. Now, what is this hill climbing search? The hill climbing is basically what we compute here, right? The statistical test that we do on the training examples. The statistical test to compute the information gain. So, what is this hill climbing? Hill climbing is nothing but the information gain that we get, the information gain that we measure. So that will tell us uh, the what is the attribute that gives us most or the highest information gain, and that's how we proceed ahead. Now, this ID3 hypothesis space for all decision tree is a complete space of finite discrete value, right? So, as I just now mentioned, that it is basically the complete space or the set of all the finite, right? There is no infinite value. They are all finite. Finite in the sense whether it can be yes or no, whether we play the tennis or we don't play the tennis. So it's a space of finite discrete valued functions. Now let me show you the complete flow. How do we have the flow of this hypothesis space, right? The hypothesis space search. So we start off with selecting a root node, so which is the most important, the very first step and very important step that to select a particular root node. Then, as and when we proceed, we select the best classifiers and we select the best attribute depending on the attribute values. We compute the information gain. How do we compute the information gain? By computing the entropy, right? And entropy, I already told you the formula for that. that is minus p plus log to the base 2 p plus minus p negative log to the base 2 p negative. So that is actually the portion of all the positive examples plus the portion of all the negative examples, right? So that's how we get the entropy, and using the entropy, we get the information gain, and information gain will help us select the next best attribute. So, depending on the next best attribute, we proceed ahead to the to a particular branch of the tree, and this process is again done repeatedly, right? So let's say we have one root here, and we have set of attributes here, attribute A1, attribute A2, and so on. So in our case, that is play tennis, we had four attributes, right? It was outlook, temperature, humidity, and wind. So depending on the number of attributes or the which is the best attribute, the tree or the flow of the tree starts descending, right? So out of which again the same process is repeated, and the best attribute is selected, and out of which the value for that particular attribute it's traversed down with the tree, and thereby selecting thereby concluding or ending having the leaf node, right? The leaf node will be basically the finite discrete value. The ID3 algorithm, which is the iterative dichotomizer 3 algorithm, when it is in the purest form, when it is the appropriate form, it performs no backtracking, right? As you can clearly see in our previous slide, there will be no backtracking. Once we select the flow of the program, the flow depending on the information gain or the entropy and so on, there is no backtracking, right? We are not, for example, when we come here, we are not backtracking to go again to other branch of the tree. We are not doing that. So when the ID3 algorithm is in the purest form, that is the best suitable problem is defined, or ID3 algorithm has the best suitable problem for it, then there will be no backtracking in its search. Also, ID3 uses all the training examples at each step, right? It uses the training example, all the training examples at each step in the search to make the statistically based decision. Now, what is this statistically based decision? As I already told you, statistically by means the statistical procedure to compute the entropy as well as the uh, information gain. Now, why do we have this approach, that is the statistical approach? The main reason, the main advantage of using this statistical approach is that it results into less sensitive error, right? It is much less sensitive to errors. If you can recall in a previous lecture, we already discussed how ID3 algorithm is different from candidate elimination algorithm and fine algorithm. So in case of fine algorithm and candidate elimination algorithm, we cannot compromise with the erroneous data or missing data. We cannot just use find algorithm and candidate elimination algorithm if we have error in our training set, or if we have missing data in our training example, training data set. So, but on contrast to it, the ID3 algorithm allows us to use the training examples or training data set where we have these errors, minute errors, not major errors, but minor errors in our training examples, uh, or even if the data is missing So the reason is because it makes use of the statistical properties or statistical tests. So how it performs that? Because it considers all the training examples. It is not dependent on some part of the training example. It takes all the training examples. So even if it is there is error in the training example, or even if the training example is missing, the data is missing. Since it makes use of all the training examples, it is able to approximate the errors or normalize the errors, right? Or even if there is a missing data, it is able to fill that gap of the missing data. Now, another very advantage of using this ID3 algorithm is it can easily extend it to handle noisy training data, right? So when we have, let's say we don't have error in the data, we don't have the data missing, we have the data, but it is a noisy data. I hope you all remember the term noisy data that you have, learned about the data communication. What is noisy signals? What is noisy data? So noisy by noisy it means that the data which just deviate from your actual data, right? So the it can be extra data, the enormous amount of data, other data which helps or which not helps actually, which uh, uh, you know brings down our efficiency, you can say. So ID3 also take care of those training data sets. So ID3 can be extended to use or its usage can be extended to handle the training data set which has noisy data in it. Right, so I hope you got the overview or the holistic view of the ID3 algorithm. What is ID3 algorithm? What is a decision tree? How to represent a decision tree? How to construct a decision tree? How to select a root node? How to descend down the tree? Right, by selecting the most best classifier, the by computing the entropy and the information gain and so on. So I hope the concept is clear, but still, if you have any kind of doubt, the session is open for doubts. Anybody who didn't understood any part of the lecture or want me to uh, revisit the concept? Yeah, anybody, any kind of doubt or error while computing the entropy or information gain? Yeah, please respond. And regarding the assignment submission and the lab assignment, as most of you have started submitting, good. So what I would suggest is the for the lab assignment, as the assignment I have already told you what is assignment. Assignment is by till 10th of October, whatever we have covered in the class, that you have to create your own notes in your own words. You can revisit the videos that we have uploaded on YouTube channel. So you can prepare your own notes, which will be helpful for your internal as well as external point of view. And those notes itself can be submitted for your assignment one. Right. I hope there is no doubt with respect to how to submit the assignment. Since most of you have submitted, others who are not able to submit, either you can ask me or you can ask your other friends. Take help of your friends. As far as the lab assignment is concerned, I have already told you what to be included in the lab assignment. But just to uh, reiterate, what you can do is for lab assignment, you can uh, start writing this assignment in the form of journal itself, like how you write the journal. So, if you want to save the time, you can actually start writing off with the journal. And since we have already covered the experiment one and two, so you can write the theory part of it, the syntax or the other this thing, the usual format that you follow for the journal writing, the aim, the objective of the experiment, the flow diagram or the algorithm, followed by the source code and the output. Now for the output, as I have already told you to install the notebook, either you can install Jupyter Notebook. I would prefer Jupyter Notebook, but those who are not able to install Jupyter Notebook or who have not have access to their laptops or computers, they can make use of Google Colab. Okay, so Google Colab doesn't require any kind of installation. Any no tools has to be installed. Google Colab is completely internet based or browser based. You have to make use of, I mean, you have to just make sure that you have your internet connection alive. But Jupyter Notebook, it can be used offline also. That is the advantage of having Jupyter Notebook. And of course, you can export those source code and the output For that, wherever you want, whether you are using Google Colab or Jupyter Notebook, you can save those files in your Google Drive itself for the future reference. And as part of your output for the experiment, whatever after execution of the program, whatever the output that you get, right? That screenshot you can attach with your PDF for the lab assignment, and that can be submitted, right? And same you can keep it with yourself so that once you come back, those same you don't have to completely do the experiments again. The same outputs that you have got, you can attach those outputs in your lab journal also. There's no problem with that. So I hope there is no doubt. We still have 5-10 minutes. If you have any kind of doubt with respect to the content that we have covered so far in the lectures, or with respect to assignments, or with respect to the lab, you can ask whatever doubt you have. I have already told you, those who have not have access to your laptop or computer, what you can do is you can simply use Google Colab in your mobile itself, in your mobile browser, Google Chrome browser. So it makes use of the online cloud service itself to compile the whole program, right? So you don't require any kind of software setup for it, unlike Jupyter Notebook, which requires the installation of Anaconda software. So there shouldn't be any kind of excuses regarding submissions, I feel. Uh, Internet is not a problem. If you don't have laptop and computer, I have already told you the solution. You can do it in the mobile itself. And the same, you can take screenshot, the output screenshot, and you can put it in your PDF that you'll be submitting for your lab assignment. And later, when you are asked to submit the journal, the hard copy of the journal, you can take the same print. Yeah, anybody, any kind of doubt that you want to ask? See, please be active in asking the doubts, because similar doubts can be there with your other fellow classmates. Instead of texting me personally, a lot of people texted me yesterday when submission date was over. But when I ask you for any kind of doubts in here in the lecture, you don't ask. Because the reason why I ask here is similar doubt can be there with other people, and these doubt clarification which I give here can be useful for them also, right? Instead of individually texting them. So let the
So
doubt be
we
seen.
don't
Yeah.
have books. So we don't have a book like the assignment book. Is it okay if we write it in the paper and later on the same can be submitted also?
It's totally fine, Sonali. I have already told, right? Assignment books, there is no necessary, I mean, there is no mandatory rule that you have to submit your assignment in the assignment book itself. What you can do is you can have plain ruled or unruled sheets, and you can write the assignment in that. And same, you can take a picture and scan and create a PDF of it and upload it in the form of assignment. And later, when you come back, when you have asked to submit the assignment book, so that time you can attach those free sheets, open sheet itself, into your assignment book. That is accepted. There's no problem with that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody, anything else that you want to clarify? And I would really suggest, as and when we proceed, like these simple algorithms, we have started off with simple algorithm, find days algorithm, then we move ahead with candidate elimination, and now with ID3. So as and when we proceed, the algorithm will be getting a little more complicated. So if you don't start now, I would say it will be a really tough time for you to understand those further algorithms. So if you are with me, if you are completing the task on daily basis, if you're after the lecture when you're going back and executing those algorithms, you'll have a better understanding of it, and eventually, ultimately, you will grasp the things better. I'm talking about the complex algorithm that we are going to encounter in our further lectures. So don't pile up the things. Don't burden yourself for the end moment. The IAs are nearing. So I would suggest to get up and whatever pending work that you have left, the procrastinated work that you have done, can complete those work and ensure that you are online on track, right? So yeah, anybody anything else that you want to ask? Let it be lab related or assignment related or I related or lecture related.
Sir,
Yeah.
so can you take a class on final project details, sir? We don't know anything about it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I think somebody has texted me, but I forgot. First of all, this is a very wrong time. I would say that to select a project, the ideal time to select a project is when you are in third semester or fourth, fifth semester, because that is the time wherein you should understand what is your area of interest and then start selecting the appropriate topic for the project that you are looking forward to complete your as your final year project. I'm glad that your classmates itself have done it. A few of your classmates, they have already started off working with their final year project from the previous semester itself. But still, nevertheless, we will have a session on it, how to select appropriate. It's a very vast question, I would say. It's a very, the question which doesn't have any straightforward answer, I would say. So it depends. The answer depends. But still, I will take one class now as to how to select the final year, project title itself. So maybe after I, will that be fine, or before I you want? When do we suggest? When do you suggest me having that class?
Sir,
So
after
after
I
I
is
only.
fine.
After I, okay, fine. So is there any deadline given to you so far that you have to submit the final year project title?
Sir, no deadline and no synopsis on how we should start working on it. And nothing is given on that, sir. So your guidelines will be very much useful for us, sir.
Okay, okay, fine. So for time being, yes, guidelines will be given. The synopsis and all formats will be given by the project coordinators, maybe soon after the I. So right now focus is on I, and once we have that, guys, but still you can take help of your friends, the seniors. I'm talking about the people those who have already started the project work and want to uh, document it or start off with their reports. You can make you help of your make use of help of your senior friends, right? Your seniors. But nevertheless, we will give you the formats and synopsis and everything after the I. Fine. So soon after the I, we will have this session once we have those guidelines, just to make sure that we all are on the same lines. We will have that session, and I'll definitely help you out whether which topic to be selected, or depending on you. Basically, as I said, it's a very know uh, vague question. I would say that it doesn't have a certain answer to it, but we will have a best try as to. I'll try my best to give my possible inputs or suggestions to select best possible topic for your project, and depending on your needs, depending on your criteria. Fine. So I think that's all for today's. Anybody else having any kind of doubt, you can save your doubts for next lecture. Okay. So I would like you to leave the lecture room. Thank you. That concludes the lecture.